what an honor it is to be here virtually. It seems so strange to be sitting in my house and sharing the Bixby Marshland, but it is an absolute honor to be here. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Genesis, and the folks over at the Sanitation District for inviting me. I have been a part of Bixby Marshland since its inception, way back 2005 to 2009 when it was designed, and I just think it's a really, really special place. So I'm very happy to be sharing it with you. As Genesis said, please interrupt me if you have any questions. They'll put those through. I do want this to be interactive, not lecture style. So anyway, good morning, and here we go. So this class, or this broadcast, is Layers of Life, the Bixby Marshland. I am a naturalist. I have been the naturalist for Madrona Marsh Preserve for 15 years, where I got to work with a very similar wetlands, and I also just love it. I love being out there. I'm currently the Park Services Manager for the City of Torrance, where I manage 34 parks, including Madrona, and we're helping to create habitat in those parks as well. So here we go. Oh, great. My down screen isn't working. I'll go that way. Okay. So Layers of Life, that's an interesting, very interesting title. So I want to kind of connect you with what that means. So take a look at your hand. Just put your hand right in front of you. Oh, welcome back, Wendy. Put your hand right in front of you and take a look at it. What do you see? Try to describe it. And I realize you're not sharing that with me, but describe it out loud to yourself. Give you a minute to do that. Beyond that description that you said, okay, it's a hand, got fingers, got lines, all of that. What is your hand? Think about what your hand represents. Use your imagination. Some of you came up with that your hand is a reflection of the layers of life in your family. If you look at your hands, some people have their index finger smaller than their ring finger or shorter. That is a family trait, and you can follow that in your lineage. So somehow you're connected with your grandparents and their grandparents and the grandparents before them. If you flip your hand over and you look at your fingernails are also a connection to that history. If you look at your hands in just a little bit different, your hands actually tell a story, just like everything else that you ever look at, of the past, the present, and the potential for the future, in many, many ways, and seen and unseen, understood and yet not even imagined. Your hand represents that potential for your life and the things that you're going to do. Imagine you holding your grandkids' hands as your kids, the hands that you share, the tools that you use, the flowers that you pick, and the things that you do. It's a really neat way to look at your hands as a layer of life. So we're going to take a look at Bixby's Layers of Life. In this program, we're going to be looking upon layer. We'll share the history of the land. We'll look at it from the ground up to the sky, ground where that water stands, it's a marshlands, up to the sky where the animals soar. And I love seeing the red-tailed hawks up there. But first, it's important to look at what the area looks like now and learn about how it looked in the past. Can you tell from this picture that the entire area you see was once marshlands? It's kind of hard to imagine. Now look for my cursor. So that my cursor is here, spinning in the middle. So you are right here at Bixby Marshland. This is the 110 freeway. This is the LA Harbor, Catalina Island, coming back around to Harbor Park, the Wilmington Drain, the Sanitation District. This is Figueroa. This is Figueroa. This is Sepulveda. So it's really so it gives you a little bit of sense of place. Getting a sense of place and understanding where the Bixby Marshland sits geographically and historically, it's much easier to get understand the layers of life. Bixby was, for thousands of years, and still is, a seasonal freshwater marsh. But what the heck is a seasonal freshwater marsh? Well, it's an area that floods in the winter rains and then dries up in the summer. This video is from the bridge, the entrance bridge, and you can see that it is filled with water. That's about 4.5 feet of water. It's pretty amazing, pretty beautiful. That is what it looked like in the spring. Doesn't look like that now. We'll get to that in a minute. They're also important places for wildlife and the wildlife habitats, and people enjoy them as well. And that's really important. The Bixby Marshland is really welcoming, and you can see that people take tours there and they get to see the animals, the ducks, the hummingbirds, and the frogs. It's a really neat place. It takes a little effort to see these things. They're not going to be jumping out at you, but you'll see them if you pay attention. They are also safe places with abundant food, shelter, and for parents to raise their young. This is a video made by Kim Moore of the baby ducklings this spring. These are baby mallard ducks, and they're pushing through a water fern. They're so incredibly cute. There's also Anna's hummingbirds. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of people that visit the Bixby Marshlands that are really good birders because it's an important bird area. A lot of birds are born there, and a lot of birds visit there. So this is Anna's hummingbirds in a Torrey pine. Philip Carhill photographed this in 2017. Now okay, so they're baby hummingbirds. Look at that nest. That nest is about the size of a golf ball. Those little guys, those little hummingbirds, when they're first born, take a look at your fingernail. This part right here, that's how big they are. That's how big the egg is. And then when they hatch, they're not much bigger than that. Absolutely incredible. Marshes also improve water quality. If you look at this picture, I love this picture. This is from Sunset Beach, but it's more than a pretty place. All of the runoff that comes from the surrounding area goes into marshlands. The sediment sets. Whoopee, that wasn't intentional. The sediment sets, and then the water infiltrates cleaner into the ground. But also these cattails and these tules on this side, they are bioremediating. They are actually taking up pollutants and putting them into the plant. So thereby cleaning not only the soil, but also the water, making it great habitat for all those animals you see. In the lower left-hand corner, there's a gray fox. There aren't any gray foxes left in our area. However, there may be still some on the hill. So one day, maybe somebody will see. So we think, is it really that important to have good water quality? It is. It's very important. It's very important so that these animals and these plants and all of us can survive and breathe the good air that these plants provide. As mentioned earlier, the wetlands have been around for thousands of years, but this is what Bixby Marsh looked like in 1995. Really, it was still a low area. There were some trees there, and water did collect there. But the dream of restoring it and making it into a better place, into a good habitat, and a place for people to visit, started with a plan. Wonderful plan that was 11 years later realized. So basically, so you get an idea, this is the Wilmington drain here. The water comes in through this catch basin and it flows through this wetlands, and it can, if needed to, go back out here and back into the Wilmington drain. Right now, there's a weir there, so the water just sits there and it infiltrates down into the ground, and therefore recharging our groundwater table. Really, really nice way to manage it. The design included 5 very distinct ecosystems. And people think, okay, is that really that important to have that? It is, because of diversity, and it provides for that biological layers of life. It also provides for survival of species. For example, dragonflies are born way over here in the water. So you got flying around dragonflies, they lay eggs in the water, they develop in the water, crawl out, and emerge into adults. The adults, as soon as they can fly, they go up over here and they actually feed on insects on this side in the upland ecosystem. The reason is these guys over here, those could be their parents, they're cannibalistic, and there are not very many animals that are cannibalistic, but these ones are. So it's really nice and was a wise design to have these layers of life here. This dynamic ecosystem attracts a really diverse population of plants, animals, and people to come and enjoy. It also attracts very rare species. So the Bixby Marshland is on the Pacific Flyway. These are birds that fly from as far north as the Arctic Circle and go as far south as Peru. So they're flying 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles. This is a migrant. This is a yellow-bellied sapsucker. Very few are ever seen in LA County, and one was seen here on March 4th, 2017. Philip made a photo of this. And the reason it's really important is because it gives us the opportunity. Birds are indicator species for health of habitat. This woodpecker being here says, okay, it's healthy enough to stop here and feed and rest and then move on their migration. Pretty special. It's also home to a lot of wildlife. You're not going to see these very often during the day, although I did see skunk and I did see coyote. I didn't see a raccoon, but I was there really, really early in the morning. So it's kind of neat that the urban wildlife survives there as well. What I did is I went 3 weeks in a row. So last Saturday, the Saturday before, and the Saturday before that. So 15, 22, and 29 of August, I went and I made photos. And that I wanted to share with you what Bixby Marsh looks like exactly now, what it looks like today. It's also a great day, a great place. Then we provide tours and opportunities to go exploring. And going exploring and sharing nature after you've gone on a tour, getting to see what you can see from your own eyes is a really special thing. We also provide educational opportunities for students. If you're a teacher, contact us, we'll share information. There'll be contact information here in just another slide. I love this slide because this is what the land looked like when it was freshly planted, this bottom part. This is the education arbor. These are eucalyptus trees that have been repurposed and now look like this. The grapes have grown over them. What's really significant is the historical value as well. Not only the recycling is important, but the history is important. Those eucalyptus trees were planted by the early Spaniards that were here as part of Rancho Palos Verdes. And hopefully soon we can provide tours. If you're interested, here's the information, the contact information. You can also go to the website and pick up this information. So that having been done, it's time now to share, virtually share about the layers of life specifically at Bixby. Let's start with 20,000 years ago. Yep, 20,000 years ago. Let's go there. So 20,000 years ago, which was the late Pleistocene epoch. The Pleistocene epoch geologically is 2.5 million years ago to about 11.7 million years ago. And it was the time where there were still glaciers. The reason this is really, really important is because the land that is Bixby Marsh hasn't changed for the last 20,000 years. Take a look at this picture. Working with the La Brea Tar Pits, the Natural History Museum, other paleo people who study these animals, we know for sure everything that's in this picture was actually in the area of Bixby Marshlands or the South Bay, because they have found fossil evidence of them. But look at the way the land looks. It's still grasslands, it's still wetlands, there's still cattails, there's still cottonwood trees, there's still sycamore trees. This is a mammoth, saber-tooth, small horse, small deer, small camel, and three-toed sloth. So there's all of these animals that were here, but the land looked really, really different. The land looked really, really the same. So you're saying, okay, Tracy, I don't really quite believe you. How do we know? How do we know what happened? Well, Gloria Rice, who was a biology teacher at Banning High School, told her students, hey, you can have extra credit. Go find me a fossil. So most people would go to the cliffs of Palos Verdes and they would find fish fossils that would fall off the cliffs. But two kids were over on Carson Street, not too far from the 405 freeway, and they were building jumps for the BMX bikes. And they, in the building, they found a mastodon jaw. And that mastodon jaw was donated to Madrona Marsh Reserve where I was working. And so, yep, we're sure that the mastodon was here. Also, you notice from the slides that there was a lot of water there. The watershed is the nearest watershed is the Dominguez watershed, and that's outlined by this entire purple area. Look at all of the rivers that are associated with all the way down here with the Palos Verdes Hills. Now, the river didn't always go into Long Beach. It historically may have gone all the way. This is Bayona wetlands. There's the Redondo Trench, may have gone there, may have migrated back here where it goes into Long Beach. So this wetland area or this watershed would have shifted throughout the area over time. This area right down at the bottom is Harbor Park. And as you know, we're above PCH, so we're located right here. This water is super important for the development of the area. Looking back now 250 years ago, this is what the coastal prairie community looked like. This is an area that would have flooded with water. It's dried up now, and those grasses are there. These are some dunes. Looks like in the LAX area. This is Rudy Matoni's map. This is an area that shows how much wetlands. All of this dark green was wetlands or vernal pools. Amazing, that much water. All of the light green is the grassland areas. And it's coastal prairie you got to be careful because most people think prairie is grass, but the coastal prairie community included small shrubs as well as grasses and some trees, not very many. So this is misdrawn. PCH isn't actually right there, it's down a little lower. So we're about right in here. All of this is about here. This is Harbor Park, maybe part of Alondra or the Gardena Willows, and everything else all the way up here is gone. 99% of the wetlands in California are gone. And so that makes Bixby Marsh even more important. So the tules that grow in the marshes, this shows what the tules are. You see how they're laying down here? They're very valuable, and they were really important to the first people that were here. So the tules grow up and then they laid back down here. Oh, don't go to that button, go to that one. Okay, so the Tongva Gabrielino people are the people who live throughout the LA Basin. These villages are always located. Look how they're always located near waters. There's hills, water, 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 water. They're all here. This is Sawangna. This is the village that was closest to the Bixby Marsh. It was the largest village in the Tongva. The Tongva wasn't a tribe, they were bands. So the Tongva nation ran all the way through the up to the San Gabriel Mountains, all the way down to about Laguna Beach, and all the way inland to about San Bernardino area. So there were about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people that were living here at one time. This village was thought to be one of the largest ones, housing several thousand people. Again, you may be thinking, how do we know? How do we know that that happened? We'll get to that in a minute. So the tules was really important because the indigenous people that live there, the Tongva people that live there, had a relationship and an understanding of their homeland. They needed to know the cycles of the weather. They needed to know the plants and the animals. They needed to know where the tules were, and they needed to know how to travel from place to place. And so what they did is they would take these tules and bind them together to make long ropes, large ropes of tules, and then bind it to other ropes of tules and create this, what looks like a canoe. Now, these were very interesting in so much that they were navigable, but they flooded. They wouldn't sink, however, because tules are hollow inside. It's fun when you go to the wetlands to open one up and get to see the middle of it. Absolutely beautiful construction. The tules were also used to make shelters. This is a quiche. The wood part is willow, and then this is generally round. This lady has made an addition and has, this is a little later, has made an addition to her home. She has a little dog there and is working on a basket, has some really neat pottery. So the tules were just a part of everyday life, and there were many, many other uses that the tules were used for. You may be wondering again, how do we know for sure that the indigenous people lived near this land? When it looked like this, top picture, how do we know? You can imagine, though, just even looking at that picture, that somebody like this gentleman was down lower looking at going through the wetlands. We know because of the Glenn Williams collection and other reasons. Glenn Williams is a gentleman who was a really good friend of mine, and he came to the Madrona Marsh Preserve, and he brought me these boxes and boxes and boxes of rocks and rocks and rocks, and bags. There's hundreds and hundreds of rocks right in there. So what he did is he had them in his family for about 100 years before they came to the Madrona Marsh. Because of that collection, we made an exhibit. This is the part of the exhibit at Madrona Marsh Preserve. Now, there is a commemoration plaque right here at Watson Industrial Park near 230th that talks about the Sawangna village. And basically, what happened is, this is Glenn Williams. What happened is these three men, there were three men, 3 generations apart, that took care of these stones. Jeff Williams is the fellow that collected the stones, and basically his father Joel told him to pick up all the stones, When he was 13 years old, they came to California from Oklahoma, told him to pick up all the stones behind the plow so that the vegetables or farms could be made. Now, he didn't know why, at that time, why he collected every rock, every piece of bone, everything that he did, he collected and he took with him. It was just something that he did. Later, he understood, Glenn came to understand that it was part of the history of what it meant to be Native, is that you had to hide your heritage. But he still knew that it was important to keep track of that. So more than 100 years after they were collected, Glenn donated them to Madrona. He spent dozens of years studying about them, learning about how they were used, what they were. And it was his hope that if you get to see these tools, that you begin to understand that history. What was most remarkable for me about this was when Glenn was showing us the collection, he would pick up the stone axes or pick up the chippers, and he would be able to put them in his hand, and you could tell the gender of the person, male or female, who used the tool, and whether they were right-handed or whether they were left-handed, depending upon where the grooves were. You feel those stones, and you can feel the history of the people, and it's an amazing collection. So yes, the Bixby Marshland was a huge area where many, many Native American people were still there. When you walk on that land, you walk where those people walked, and it's pretty special. But after the Tongva were there, not after, Tongva had been there all along, still are. I still work with our elders there in that area. But it was after the Tongva Nation reduced, New Spain was developed, and we were part of Alta California. And we ended up starting the presidios, the ranchos, and the missions. They started in 1769, and San Diego, last one was built in 1823. They rounded up a lot of the indigenous people, not all of them, but a lot of the indigenous peoples ended up being slaves in the missions, or they were in boarding schools. As the land got divided up into ranchos, this is Palos Verdes, this is San Pedro, and all of these lines that you see through here are all the different land grants or ranchos that were in the area. So there was a lot, and this is the mission, San Gabriel. So there's just a tremendous amount of land division up here in Alta California. It was a very complicated history. Those people who have studied history know this is really complicated. But the original land here that included Palos Verdes all the way through this area was given to Juan Jose Dominguez. He was given the very first land grant. It was given to him in the 1780s, and he was just a really devoted soldier. And he worked with the Portola expedition and Juanapero Serra expedition, and he was very much of a family man, and he really cared about this land, and all of his relations were related, and by the way, still are a part of the land that we exist on now. This photograph is him, and then this one is actually part of Palos Verdes. This is what it looked like, the peninsula looked like. So it's not a lot of trees, a lot of grasses.
Hi, Tracy. This is Wendy. We have a question from Caitlin. Can
Hi,
we
Caitlin.
ask you that right now?
Sure.
So she says, what is the biggest, coolest predator that has been seen in the marshland?
I would say the biggest, coolest predator is in our time, in this time, is probably the coyotes. And I know that they're controversial, but they have been a part of the life there at the Bixby Marshland for at least the last 200,000 years. In one form or another, they're coyotes still. They're that lineage. And I guess the reason I think they're the biggest, coolest is because I had such a great experience with them. The second day that I went in there, I was coming across the bridge so very slowly, and I looked to the left, and there were two pups, and they were tumbling, and they were playing, and they were nipping at each other, and they were just having a really, really great time. And then they went whoop. They saw me when they were gone. It was just a really neat. It's a very cool. They were very cool to see. And they're important because they keep the system in balance. One of the things that can happen that would be a disaster is if there were too many ground squirrels. So ground squirrels, the reason the water sits there is because there's a clay layer underneath and the water sits on top of it. Because the river came through and dropped that clay layer. Well, those coyotes keep those ground squirrels in check, because if the ground squirrels broke through the clay layer, there wouldn't be any water there. It would just be the sand of the dunes that came, that were developed as this area was developed. So coyotes are cool and necessary in that area for this ecological purpose. For those people who have lost pets because of coyotes, I am so sorry. I do get that. So I do get that it's really a hard and hard thing to reconcile. But anyway, it was cool to see him. So thank you for
That's
asking.
great, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Thank you.
So this is Jose Loreto Sepulveda. He's a gentleman who, well, he really liked this area called Rancho, that was this part of the hill. It wasn't deeded to him. He went to court not once, but twice, but 3 times. The first 2 times he lost. The judge says, no, it's in the Dominguez family. Leave it alone. But he stayed there long enough and fought hard enough. And eventually this became Rancho Palos Verdes. So Rancho Palos Verdes is here. And this is Sepulveda. This is Figueroa. So when you're standing in the parking lot and you're looking across the street, you're looking at Rancho San Pedro. Now remember, this whole area is Sawangna Village, but so it's related in that way. But it's kind of interesting that's right there on the edge. Sepulveda was involved in a lot of politics and land management, and he spent a lot of time in Northern California. He wasn't on the rancho very much. His ranch instead was run by Harry Phillips, and this is he driving the horse team plowing the area near the eastern edge of Palos Verdes. So that's not too far from Bixby Marsh. Now, do you see this plow and these horses? This is what young Joel, 13-year-old, would walk behind and pick up all those stones. 13 years old, picking up 300, 400, 500 pounds of stones in time. This is the rancho, the house. Across the street, this is what it looked like, so Rancho San Pedro. A lot of these cattle came up, there's some of the eucalyptus trees. A lot of these cattle came on ships and they would be housed right there near Bixby Marsh. Now, how the heck it's called Bixby Marsh? It took me a long time, like 2 hours, to figure this out, but I figured it out. So Mr. Sepulveda was involved with a lot of stuff, and he was doing a lot of work, and he started running into financial difficulties. So he started selling off his land. Originally, he sold off this part to Mr. Bixby. This is Area H. You look Area H, Jotham Bixby. And slowly, Mr. Bixby ended up getting all of these areas. So that's how it's called. Remember, we're located right here. That's how we ended up being the Bixby Marshlands. This is him as a young man. He loved his dogs, and he also, he was a rancher, but he ranched sheep, not cows. So, and this is him as a little bit older man. It was fun to go look for and find those photos. So this is how the area became known as Bixby Slough, not Marsh. And it was really, really interesting. So this is Harbor Lake. This is the Wilmington Drain going into the Bixby Marshland. And then it's connected to another water body that goes all the way over here into Torrance, into Long Beach, and into the 91 freeway. So it was just a huge area of water. So this is what it looks like today. Again, you've got Harbor Lake, the Wilmington Drain, and the Bixby Marshland right there. Now, how about let's go on the land? So again, as I said, I went to that marshland 3 Saturdays in a row so that you can see what it looks like right now. I so much wish you could go walking there. I wish I was with you today walking. It's beautiful. This is the first thing I heard and saw that morning. Wendy was there. She got to see it too, but watch. It's a young juvenile Cooper hawk calling for his mom, just hoping mom will bring him something to eat. You can see the eye is injured. Young hawks are not real good flyers, so he injured his eye, but he'll heal just fine. What you're hearing in the background is goldfinches. Well, and the air, of course. So this is just, I wanted to capture a still. That is such a beautiful bird, beautiful Cooper's hawk. There's a whole story. I could do a whole program on Cooper's hawks.
So that's a fantastic experience that we had, Tracy. And we have a question from Lawrence Song. And he says, is it possible for the marshland to expand in the future?
It is possible. That would be better answered by you, Wendy. I'm not in the land management part of this aspect as a naturalist. Does anybody on the Bixby side have an answer to that?
So, well, you and I talked about it a little bit, Tracy, not necessarily the Bixby Marshland. I think you've seen our location and we're pretty sandwiched there. We did a lot. You touched on it when you talked about the 5 different zones. We're limited to that 17 acres. And so what we wanted to do was get as many ecosystems and as much habitat as possible into that smaller footprint. But you told me that some of the other areas you had in the works for kind of similar
Yes, for
similar
connectivity.
marshland and open spaces. I know
Right.
you and I had that discussion, but to answer it, unfortunately, we are really sandwiched in right there. So I don't see a potential for expanding our site, but I do see that there are some other sites throughout Los Angeles County.
And that's so important. Bixby Marshland is a part and connected to Madrona Marsh, the Gardena Willows, the whole Wilmington Drain area. And so can we expand it? Not by its own fence line, but we can expand it by creating habitats in our own yard so we can create connectivity for the animals, the insects that migrate, the butterflies that migrate, the birds that migrate through. We can really help pollinators by doing restoration in areas that we can and in doing habitat planting or California friendly planting in our own yards. That's another topic too. So this is a little bit closer picture of this Cooper's hawk, and I'm playing this because watch the way it moves its head. It's really interesting. Still calling for mom. You see that wriggling in the head? Birds can't move their eyes like we can, so they have to move their head to try to get exactly the right look. Actually, he's looking for mom, but that's what they do. So it's kind of fun to watch birds as they learn to navigate through the world. So after the hawk flew away, I was like, wow, what's going to be a great day. So I started down the path and started exploring. So let's go there. First came along the wetland area. You come across this bridge and literally you can stand from here to here to here to here. Jess Morton and I stood on this bridge for hours. Literally, he was photographing, identifying dragonflies, and it was so fun to share that experience with him. But there's so much life happening there that we actually first got caught there. I didn't do much walking on my first time there. It's so beautiful. That's where that original video came from, is right there at this location. Right now, this is what that area to the right of the bridge looks like. It's so amazing because I saw it 3 weeks in a row and I saw it different times of the day. I learned that the marshland is so dynamic. It changes hour by hour, day by day. It looks different, it feels different, and through careful observation, if you go there too, you're going to be able to observe this as well. So this is August 15 at 7:32 a.m. This is just a few hours later, right? 3 hours later, this is what it looks like. It's starting to warm up and we're starting to get a little algal bloom right here. Yes, ma'am. Oh, Wendy came back on.
Oh, yes, we do have a question from
Okay.
Ring Fang. He said, how is the Bixby Marshland still important to contemporary life other than its view and its biodiversity? And why can't it stay unchanged for the next 20,000 years?
Oh, why and how? Well, hopefully it will. And the importance is the ecological services that wetlands provide, like the the early slide said, is the water quality, groundwater recharge, cleaning the water that goes into the LA harbor, and CO2 sequestration. Each one of these trees, let's say this is a cottonwood tree. This tree can sequester approximately 300 to 400 pounds of CO2 every year. And then you start looking at all of these trees. So the biological and ecological services that they provide us as humans is amazing. Plus the added bonus of being able to create habitat and help other species survive as well. Good question. Thank you for asking. So this is at 7:10 a.m. on August 22. Look at this bloom. Now, August 22 was hot, okay? It was, when I got there, it was, even though it was really cloudy, it was super hot. It was almost, it was like almost 80, and that's hot there. And it got, before I left, it was over 90. So we have that bloom. And then on last Saturday, this is what it looked like. It was cooler. The whole algae went through its cycle and it dropped out of the water column. Basically, the oxygen level dropped so low that the plant couldn't survive anymore. But it sure did bring a lot of mallards. Or 17 mallards that came that day. This is a female mallard and a male mallard. I can tell because it has a yellow bill and an orange bill, but they're molting. They can't fly very well. These are the flight feathers. And once they fill in, they'll be able to fly. Even the tail feathers are a little bit short, but they're very cute. So this is what they do most of the time there. They're sitting there. I can't tell from a picture exactly what's happening here. You got 2 females and a male, and but you can from the video. This is what they're doing. Now they're just scooting their head through the water like this because their mouth is very much like a whale, and they have like baleen, and they suck in the water and they spit the water out, but staying in their mouth is the invertebrates that are swimming around, the little small insects that are in the water. It's really fun to watch them.
So we have another question. Sorry. So we have another question. Can you hear me, Tracy, from an anonymous attendee? So they say, do the die-off of algal blooms affect fish and other wildlife?
It does. The die-off is a symptom. So remember I said at the very beginning that the system is very dynamic. So the oxygen level, when the rain falls, the oxygen level is up around 10 or 11. As the water gets compressed by the air and as it evaporates, the water gets compressed and it goes down into maybe 2, 3, it becomes eutrophic. Eutrophic water is a limiting factor for life. So some insects can handle the low amount of oxygen and some insects can't. Some plants can survive a low amount of oxygen and some can't. So it has a very major effect. So the algal bloom is a symptom that oxygen level, if we were to test the water oxygen, that oxygen level had declined from the 10, 11 and was probably 6, 5. And then when it cleared back up again, when it became cooler, the nights, the exchange of air was better, more oxygen came up. It either went up or it went down. Based on the feeding, it looks like it went up because the invertebrates were there by the mallards were eating the invertebrates. Excellent question. So
Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome. When you're looking at this thing, you can look at very simple things like the way the shore is set up here. Just this line, if we were to study this transect right from the shore into the water, this tells an entire story. It's, again, another class. It's an amazing story of the way soil works in wetlands. These are great snowy egrets, though. I love these guys. This is the arbor again. I just happen to love it, and I loved going there, not only for the grapes, but there's a pretty neat spider that goes there, and I'll get to that in a minute. So I made it just across the bridge, and I'm looking through my binoculars, I'm like, what? Oh, that's an adult Cooper's. That's the one the baby's looking for. And then I hear the baby calling, and goes slamming into the tree. And if you look at her, this is Mama, you can see that she's got something hanging here in her talons. So the bird goes into the tree, tumbles out of the tree, and onto the ground right in front of me, and got the bird that Mama ate. Now, these next few slides are what happens when there's usually more than one in a nest. So there were 2 juveniles, but watch the wings. Watch the wings cover up the food so nobody knows. He does a great job of pretending, oh, there's no food here. I'm going to keep calling like I want food. That way nobody knows I have any. See, there's none there. Oh, I better thank Mama. And then off he flew. And a little bit later, I saw him. This is the crop. This is where the bird is now. The stomach muscle, the stomach juices come up, digest the bird, and then the feathers and stuff they expel, calling again. So after 8, the young hawk went off to explore its homeland. I saw it probably 2.5 hours later. So it was doing a lot of exploring. They have a home range of quite a ways, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles. So it's kind of neat. He's got a lot of area to cover. After that experience, I ended up looking at plants. This is a cottonwood tree, Fremont cottonwood. And look at this beautiful blue elderberry. Tongva people use this one for so many things, so much usage on this plant. And this is a Torrey pine. This is the northernmost area from San Diego where the Torrey pine is growing. I don't see any other on the peninsula, so it's real special to have that to have Torrey pines there. There's a California sycamore tree, beautiful tree. And then these are rose hips. This is, again, another indigenous food source or drink source. This is what the flower looks like in spring. This is basically the seed pod of the rose. This is a great plant. This is rough cocklebur. It's rough because if you feel this plant, it feels like sandpaper. But what's the coolest is the seeds, because the seeds, look at how beautiful that is. Look at all those little spikes. And then you see all these little hooks. This was the inspiration behind Velcro. If you go buy this one, it's going to stick to your clothes and you're just going to have to peel it off just exactly like you do Velcro. I love water. So I had to watch this process. This is a gathering of dewdrops, and they literally gather. This isn't coming from the air. Basically, the moisture sits upon the leaf, and the connectivity of the water, the attractiveness of the water gathers around moisture and creates these drops. Absolutely beautiful. And if the conditions are just right, and I'm talking just exactly right, then sky is reflected in those dewdrops. I've seen trees reflect in them. I've seen myself reflected in them. Dewdrops in and of themselves are amazing things to look at. You can watch that at home. It's fun to see. There's sometimes not good things. This is a trash bag. So it's kind of sad to see that in the wetlands. So it's really important to keep those out of the wetlands, which the staff, the Sanitation District does that very well. This is barnyard grass. This is the most important food source at the Bixby Marshlands for all of the seed eaters. We'll get to that too. This is that tetragnatha. This is a long-jawed spider. This is an orb weaver. Now at Madrona, I've done surveys for a long, long time. At Madrona, I maybe see 1 to 2 tetragnatha a year. In that arbor area, I saw 22 in one day. And it was amazing. Again, people don't like spiders sometimes, but the ecological services of keeping other insects in check and balance they're very, very important. Now, also people that get a bad rap are flies. Flies, people get annoyed of, at their house. They get house flies or bottle flies, and they get in the house and they're annoying. But most flies are non-disease carrying. They're simply beautiful, small pollinators that are food sources for other animals in the system. So this is a loxodonid fly, very beautiful. Look at that beautiful wing pattern, good color. All flies have their eyes in front here and 2 little antennae that come right off in between their eyes. This is a black-back grass skimmer, lifer for me. I keep a life list of flies. Okay, yep, that makes me a nerd, but it's beautiful. Look how beautiful this is. And this guy, look at your fingernail again. This little tip of your fingernail, it's half that size. Okay, so I really, really had to take a close-up picture to make this one. This is a blade of grass that it's on, or blade of tules. This is a little bit bigger than that fly. This is a marsh fly. I love their long legs, really neat pattern. There's another view of it, getting to see the pattern on it. This is a birdseed fly. Again, this thing is about 2 to 3 millimeters, so it's the little tiny part of your fingernail. Beautiful green eyes. Look at this patterning, intricate patterning on the wings. I love these. This was a life one for me too. I've never seen this anywhere, and I've looked at a lot of insects. This is a 4-speckled fly. This is a convolvulus plant. This is about the size of a quarter, so you can imagine how small this one is. I thank goodness I have a really nice camera to do this with. It's a little point and shoot G16 Canon. And this is a common flower fly. Again, really tiny fly. Oblique striped tail. These and the margin calicophers look really close. You probably have these in your yard if you have native plants. They're pretty common. And then this is a robber fly. This one's much bigger. It's a bee mimic, and it's about the size of a bumblebee. Pretty hairy guy. Look at all those hairs. This is an early taconid fly. This one also is about the size of a bumblebee. Going back to the structure, flies have 2 wings, and then the eyes, and then these are the antennae. They're extremely fastidious. In order to fly, they have to bathe a lot. Birds have to bathe every day. Flies have to bathe 2, 3, 4 times an hour in order to survive. And then there's a crane fly. This is an ant, so it gives you an idea of the size. A lot of people think these are mosquito hawks, but they're not. They don't bite. They eat detritus, decaying leaf matter. So they're very friendly, very important for soil production. So I went through the tules there and through the wetlands, and I came across, these are the pipes that run to the sanitation district. But I'm always curious about what's underneath things. And I was wondering if there were spiders or something underneath here. So I scooted myself underneath these pipes, and I took a look, and I found these. These are guinea paper wasps, and they're a new wasp. I had never seen them before, but I'd read about them. These are a type of paper wasp that is not the kind that you have at your house, but it is a wasp that's expanding its range throughout the United States due to climate change. But they are absolutely beautiful. Look at this intricate detail. Uh, how
We
beautiful.
have a
Pretty little
we
dot.
have a question for you, Tracy,
Okay.
from Don. He
Hi,
says
Don.
amazing. Yeah, he says amazing photos. Thank you for sharing. Do you have any quick tips for photographing plants, birds, and insects?
Yes, there are a good question. I do a lot of research on cameras, and so I use three cameras. I use a Canon 7D, an old one, 2009, with a 100-400 to do my bird photography because it is set up for motion. So that's my bird photography. If I'm doing landscape photography, I either use the iPhone because actually it's one of the best cameras that you can use, or I use my G16 point and shoot, which is a great camera. And also my macro photographies with the G16. It's absolutely great. To make stills, and if I'm in a hurry, like I just want to go somewhere in a hurry and grab my camera but not carry something so big, I love the Nikon P900. It is set up for movement. It has great stability. It has a little bit hard to focus or to find the bird. So, but it has a button that extends the range from, I think it's 84 to 600 focal length. So I love that. And so the videos are so still. Those videos that I did that were really still, that's what that is. So in my repertoire, I use those three cameras. So notice I don't do any pictures of people because I really suck at making pictures, but I can hit these animals pretty good. So
You
you'd have to
do.
look
Those
at.
are great tips, Tracy.
So yeah, it's
Thank
fun. It's
you.
fun to use those really nice equipment, and they're very inexpensive. I don't shoot all. Nothing that I have is very expensive, but I love these pictures. Those kids out there, I made this one for you. I love roly-polies. I loved roly-polies as a kid, and yep, there was a roly-poly there. This is a prickly lettuce, or prickly lettuce is the plant. Okay, so some things are really hard to see. This is a cocklebur, a rough cocklebur leaf. This is a little bug. I'm not sure it's a flea beetle, but it's a predaceous bug of some kind. This is with the camera. This is with my big camera. This is my little camera. And look at how beautiful that bronze color it is. I think that's amazing to be able to see that. Just walking around, having a good time. Then there's damselflies and dragonflies. So now we came off the floor. We're coming up a little bit into the grasses now. And this is a black-fronted forktail. It's a damselfly. And damselflies are related to dragonflies, but they're smaller. They're this big. They're 2 to 3 centimeters. And they hold their wings back behind. This is the abdomen. This is the thorax. And this is the head, the parts of the insects. Part of the insects. Very beautiful one. It's only the second one I saw this year, so they're relatively uncommon. This one's very common, Pacific forktail, again, a damselfly this is a blade of grass, barnyard grass. It's pretty small. And then there are dragonflies, and I love the dragonflies, especially if they're sitting. It's easy to photograph them. But this is a blue-eyed darner. In the dew, you can find them by looking for the dewdrops, the reflection of the water on them, but they're absolutely stunning. You can photograph them sitting, in flight, or this is a mating position. This is a female. This is called wheel formation, and this is a male. Flame skimmer, how stunning is that? Beautiful, beautiful male dragonfly. I had to get another one because it was so pretty. And then this is a female perched way up in a tree. Look at the neat little hairs they have on their legs. Stunning. Weird things happen too. These are micro moths. I was going to call somebody. Well, I was going to call Wendy. And look, there's a mating pair of moths on my phone. It's kind of fun. And then there's butterflies. This is a marine blue butterfly and a cabbage white butterfly. Look at these eyes, stunning eyes. And a fiery skipper. This is the most abundant butterfly on cocklebur at Bixby. Beautiful butterfly. This is either a fiery, but it could be a woodland. I'm not really sure. So I don't want to say something positively if I don't know. But I know this is a fiery up on top of a mule fat flower. Beautiful, beautiful butterfly. That was, by the way, this was his proboscis. This is the tongue. It's stored rolled up in the mouth here. And then this is like a straw sucking up the pollen on the plants. This is an umber skipper, the second most abundant butterfly at Bixby right now. And this again, barnyard grass and another umber. I guess I like them. I made 3 photos. This is a gray hair streak. The gray hair streak is in Ivy, but get right there. This is a gray hair streak. It's in the blue complex, and blues always perch with their head down because they have eye spots. These eye spots, a bird may want to eat this one, and so it'll clip off this, and it's okay. It'll fly without those back feathers, those back wings, so it's safe. It keeps its head safe. And then, oh my gosh, I love the frogs. The first day it was so hot, I didn't see a single frog. The second day was a little bit cooler in the morning. It was very dewy, and I saw 77 frogs. And then the last day, I saw only 1. So they migrate into the tules and keep themselves warmer and cooler when it's a hotter day. But they are so cute, and they change very quickly. All of them have this black stripe from their nose to their eye, through their body here, but they can be any color. Beautiful, beautiful little guy. This guy is only the size of about between a nickel and a dime size. Very small guys. This is the only lizard I saw. I'm sure they were there. I just didn't see them. And then, of course, I saw fox squirrel. I made this one for the kids because it's so cute. There's a lot of birds. Yes.
We have a question from Aditi. He
Hi.
said, how long is the tongue of a fiery skipper?
I would say, good question. I have never had that question. So I would say it's at least the length of the body size. So it's probably about 1.5 centimeters long. That's really long. That's really long. What's even more interesting is a hummingbird's tongue does the same thing. It comes through their mouth. It feeds the same way. It's kind of a zippered straw, and it comes and it wraps around their ear, and then it comes back out, and that's how they get nectar. Very interesting beings. So this is a lazuli bunting. I saw it all 3 weeks. It looks really good here, but it's going to look a little ratty as it starts to molt. So this is a migrant bird or nearby, probably born nearby, migrating from upslope to downslope. This is what it looked like 3 weeks ago. So that first one was the 15th. This was the 29th. Beautiful bird. Yellow warbler, male with the coloring here, probably born, probably had a family there because I saw a family of children and a mother there. This is the most abundant bird at Bixby. This is a scaly-breasted munia. Look at the cinnamon color. This one is actually for Wendy's mom, who was such a trooper and was out every single day with me early in the morning, with us early in the morning. Scaly-breasted munia, cinnamon color, scaly back. This is a child, a young one.
So we have a question from Caitlin Lau. She
Okay.
says, were there any blooming flowers when you visited?
Yes, there were poppies blooming. I saw quite a few poppies. The mule fat was blooming, and the convolvulus was blooming, and the prickly lettuce was blooming. And little hint about that, and that's the reason why that's such a good question, is because in order to find the insects, they're pollinators, you pretty much have to find the blooming plants. So I was looking for those very specifically. So thank you for asking that. That was very good. So this is kind of what they look like in the grass, but watch, this is amazing. Look at how many are just in this little video. Looking at over 100 right there. It's amazing. I counted 130 in that set. Eating the barnyard grass, flying. I love this kind of mustardy color in the tail. Just a beautiful, beautiful bird. Now they started off non-native, and now they are they're naturalized. So they've actually like gotten their citizenship. So they're now counted as an ABA or American Birding Association bird. But they were originally escapees from pet stores. But now they have genetically changed enough to be a very distinct species from those that you can buy in a pet store. They're beautiful birds. Look at that.
We have a question from Carell Meeks. He
Hi.
says, hello, with lots of exclamation points, Tracy. Thank you for doing this. Just a quick question. Does the heat have a huge impact on the marshland and their organisms? If they do, how so?
Good question. Heat has a huge effect on the marshlands in a lot of different ways. The heat in the summer is extremely important to dry up the marshlands. That kills the plants. It makes the ground level, and it makes space for the water to come in and flood. And that water then it can be deep and clear and beautiful and filled with insects. If the heat didn't come and cause the disruption in the plant life, then the wetlands would not be there. They would eventually fill up with grasses and the water would not, the fish wouldn't even be able to get through there. So it's really, really important. Further, the heat and the length of day causes the exact same thing in the plants. In the trees, that's the length of day is causing that photosynthetic change that causes the color and drops the leaves onto the ground. That leaf litter is absolutely vital in being the nurseries for the next generation of insects in the ground, protects them from the winter. So wow, what a great group of people you are. Thank you. That was a phenomenal question. I love the Scaly Munia. When I like something, I make a lot of photos of him. In this process, this day, I made 711 photos and I kept about 100 photos. In the total process, I took about 2,300 photos, and I'm sharing about 85 of my photos with you here. This is a pin-tailed white child. This one is born there at the Bixby Marshland. So when you go to a place and there's children being born, there's young being born, you know you have a vital habitat, and something is right going on there, which is phenomenal. This is a male child. This is what they look like. Again, these are escapees. Look at this black and white bird, bubblegum bill. Look at that tail. And this is a female, and this is a child. So that's a family. You'll see all three kinds there. Northern mockingbird, you get these noisy little guys. They're the ones that sing at night. And this is a bush tit that is bathing. This young girl bush tit is bathing in the dewdrops on the tulies. How important is that? Because there's not a lot of standing water there. This is the male. I can tell it's a male because it has an all black eye, and the female has a white eye on the cocklebur waiting. The bush tits wait their turn in line to bathe. So this one's waiting for the water, to get to the water. And this is a young boy on mule fat. This is a house wren, very chatty little guy. This is not a good picture, but I want to put it in here because it's a female common yellowthroat, and I want to let you know that females and males look very different. This one's a male, beautiful masked male. Notice now we're starting to go up into from the grasses towards the sky. This is at the top of the grasses. This is a blue grosbeak. Saw that last Saturday. Oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. Look at that indigo color. Look at this band of color. And these guys breed, I'll show you a map a little bit later, all the way through North Dakota. Hi, Wendy.
So we have a question, Tracy, from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, how have we impacted the marshland? So the question actually says, how have we damaged the marshland?
We haven't, and I can't, interestingly, I can't say that about all places. The marshland before the sanitation district restored it was degraded by by the Spanish use mostly. Cattles are very, very, very disruptive to ecological systems. The urea, the change of phosphates, everything, they change the soil structure and the plant structure. So they're very, very damaging. So that's why that 1995 picture looked kind of like bad, like just an empty lot that had nothing growing on it. And then the design came along. So since 2009, when this started to grow, there has been no damage. The only thing that I'm a little worried about is the trash that sometimes comes through. But again, I saw so little trash. I saw a rusty can, which I left there because I know it was from probably the 60s. And I thought, artifact, somebody's going to teach about that. So I left it. But any other trash I picked up. Good question. An excellent question. Thank you. Look at this coloring. What a beautiful bird. Now this bird is a pretty big bird. It's about the size of your hand, your full hand. So it's a grosbeak. Oh my gosh, mornings. I know that you're not there in mornings, but you can be at your house at mornings. There was a swarm of dragonflies, and I was making photos in my manual mode, full manual, so I could focus on them. And they were eating what we call aerial plankton. These are just fungus gnats that are rising up off of the ground, and these guys are just having a feast on them. Look at all this. Boy, the aerial maneuvers that they can make.
So Brandon has his hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk, Brandon, and so hopefully you can ask your question.
Hi, Brandon.
Brandon, are you able to? It shows you still muted.
There you are.
Hello, Mr. Schritz.
Hi.
I have an interesting question here.
Okay. Oh, you got muted. Go ahead and unmute again.
We're losing you, Brandon. Maybe you should type your question in, and we'll go ahead and answer it live. But we're having an unstable connection with you. Sorry about that. While I have you stopped, though, let me go ahead and ask a question from an anonymous attendee. Have there been instances in which the marshland was overpopulated? And if so, what happened or what would happen? This goes back to your coyotes. How about it?
Yeah. If overpopulation happens, nature has a good way of balancing that out. So you just allow it to balance out. So has it been overpopulated before? No, not that I'm aware of. It'll get overpopulated maybe with a certain plant, and then something will happen, and another plant or another condition will come to balance it out. Nature's wonderful in that way. So back to the mornings. Mornings are absolutely incredible. This is just before sunrise. I just love the sky behind there. The light coming through the clouds beginning to light up the tules. It's just added the quiet. It's just so beautiful. The sun right through the land, and then the fog lifts up off the land. It's so pretty. The red-tailed hawks, when it's this dark or this cool or this cloudy, they need warm air to soar. So this is a juvenile red-tailed hawk just waiting for the warmer air to go flying. But the mallards can fly. They're used to wet weather, and this is a mallard heading over towards the wetlands. Now we're going back up into the sky a little bit. This is a lesser goldfinch. They're very vocal, probably born there at Bixby. This is a house finch. You probably have these at your house. And this is an Anna's hummingbird. This is a black phoebe. Now we're way up in the trees. A black phoebe. These guys eat insects too. Allen's hummingbirds looking for insects also. And then also eating the aerial plankton are barn swallows. And they have this fork tail, really neat, straight wingspan, rounded. This is beautiful. This is what they look like when they are perched. Western gull heading over to the beach. I know it's a western gull because of the kind of the charcoal trailing edge of the wings here. And also they have pink feet. Notice I didn't say seagull. They were gulls. And then this is a red-shouldered hawk, very vocal hawk. But I always think this looks like a checkerboard. So if I see a checkerboard up in the sky, I know that it's a red-shouldered hawk. And then a white-throated swift. These were probably born up in the Malaga Dunes area. So probably, flew quite a ways to come to hunt over the Bixby Marshlands. And this is a great egret. This one was flying down the Wilmington Drain towards the ocean. So all that you've seen here lives on or visits the Bixby Marsh. There's so much to see. There's so many layers on this land. Again, that has not changed for 20,000 years. These grasses, these trees, all of them have been there a long time. When you visit, you may see Torrey pines next to willow trees. That's super rare to see. You may see beautiful landscapes. You may get to go on a shady walk in a cool path. You may see the low areas that you know will fill up with water in the rain. You may get to see and maybe taste the wild grapes. If you were to go right now, you would notice fall is in the air. You can see the leaves are changing. And look at that cottonwood tree next to the Torrey pine. This is that blue grosbeak. You get to see migrants. Blue grosbeaks breed all the way up here throughout the United States and into the Great Plains area. This is where they are when they winter. So our blue grosbeak, this is right here where I was standing. They don't breed there. It's going to probably fly all the way into Central America. That's where the largest population is, and winter there.
So we have a question from an anonymous attendee, Tracy.
Okay.
She asks how you guys are funded and supported to continue the amazing conservation work you do. And she says, thank you.
Aww.
So for Bixby, we had a lot of community support. And so we did have some proposition money, some grant money to get the marshland started. But we're a partnership with the flood control district as well. So they provided the land and the sanitation districts agreed to maintain it. So the maintenance costs are borne by the sanitation district. So thank you for that.
Great work throughout California. I work with a lot of sanitation district fundings. When you go outside, go explore nature. Look for the changes, the leaves. These are cottonwood leaves. Look for those in your parks. Look up in the sky and see the soaring hawks and imagine that you're up there and imagine what they can see. And you probably already see these at your house. That's kind of fun to see these orb weavers. They're not a problem. They're annoying, but they're not a problem. They're only annoying when you walk through them. And then when you do get a chance, watch the website, see if you can come and visit the marshlands. It's an absolutely fascinating place to be. And it just makes you curious. It makes you want to see more. It's a very, very special place. So with that, thank you so much for attending.
And we'll open it up for questions and answers. I also wanted to take this opportunity to just thank all of you and for coming to our 5th broadcast. The sanitation districts would rather welcome you into the marshland. And Tracy has done a tremendous amount of research and she really has a passion for enhancing our open spaces. And that's because research shows us that it's important for both our physical and our mental health to get out there and to interact with nature. So thanks to Tracy. I know she gave more than 100 hours of her own time to putting this broadcast together. We are committed to continuing to interact and engage. So we have virtual tours of our facilities. You can connect with the sanitation districts through social media. And we're also involved with the South Bay Environmental Services Center. And so you can connect with us through that. We're not going anywhere. We do have a question from Sophia, and she's asking if there are any endangered species present in the marshland right now, and what steps are being taken to protect and monitor them.
There are no endangered species. However, there are a lot of listed species. The Torrey pine, I don't think the Torrey pine is endangered, but listed. So that's a really important one. The Pacific tree frog is threatened. Climate change has caused chytrid disease. And so the frogs get a fungus in their mouth, which causes them to decline. But other than that, at this moment, there aren't any. However, through the system, the least Bell's vireo will be there. There will be endangered species who need this critical spot to stop, rest, feed, and continue on their way on their migration.
We have another question. This is from Brandon. Do you have more pictures of insects going through their reproduction motions? They seemed really interesting to me.
I do. I got the two there that there were the moth and the dragonfly, but it's very fascinating. And what's even more fascinating and what's really fun to film is there's a lot of courtship happening right now. There's a lot of pair bonding that insects or animals, the coyotes, even the mallards, they're already pairing up for the next season. So watching that entire system is really fun. And you bring up a good thing, Brandon. If you're specifically interested in something about the marshlands and you want to go, gosh, I'd love to know more about the insects, or I want to know more about the indigenous people of the area, then get a hold of Wendy. She will set up a class and create that for you.
We have a question from Aaron. Have bald eagles, gold eagles, and peregrine falcon been seen in the marshland?
Yes. No golden eagles. The golden eagles are not in our area, but there's a bald eagle that lives on Catalina that comes and visits the harbor Harbor Lake, and we can see that, and we see that fly over every once in a while. The peregrine falcons are born on the peninsula, and they hunt all the way throughout our entire system. So thank you. That's another endangered or threatened species. So great question.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee. They say, hello, they're wondering if Bixby has fish, and says, sorry for the bad English. They say, I guess they want to know if they have big fish.
Oh yes, there's no big fishes because it's a seasonal wetland. So they wouldn't survive. However, historically, when it was connected to the LA River directly, so the LA River would comes into the Dominguez Channel, and then flooding into the Wilmington Drain and into the harbor. Yes, you would have a tremendous amount of fish, and fish were vital in the farming, especially the farming parts of the indigenous lives, because the fish were used as food and fertilizer. So really good question. Right now, there's mosquito fish. So those are really, really important because they eat the mosquito larvae that are there. So you never see a mosquito when you're there. I didn't get bitten once, and I was wearing shorts. It was too hot to wear otherwise. And then they're also really good when the water declines. Then that's what the snowy egrets were on the bank eating. So yeah, there's little fishes. They're about that big.
So we have another question from an anonymous attendee. Do you guys grow plants, wildflowers in the marshland, or is it a completely hands-off process?
That's a very good question. It is a restored area, and in so much that the cattle couldn't eat the native plants because they're too woody. It hurts their mouth. So the Spanish people had to bring in the oats, wheat, rye, barnyard grass, barley. All of that is non-native, so the cattle could eat, and those exist in the wetlands. With the restoration, right now, for example, I forgot to mention Encilia californica, California sunflower is blooming. So we plant those, and then we have volunteers, and maybe you'd like to be one that helps to keep the weeds down so that those native plants can survive and thrive. Good question.
And we have one from MC2. So what is the impact of the freeway on the marshland and the impacts of air pollution?
Good question. The impacts of the freeway, interestingly, I challenge you, those who drive, and take a look at the freeways and what their impact is. The impact obviously is the loss of land. However, interestingly, the birds and the insects use the freeways just like they would use riverways, and they're throughways. So they fly right over them and right down toward the ocean. So it's kind of an interesting part of that. The pollution from the port used to be a really big problem. We've done a lot of pollution studies in the South Bay area, did a lot at Madrona, and there was a lot of pollution that used to come out of the port. But the port has made an extreme effort in the last 5 to 7 years to go get rid of diesel, go green, and be cleaner. Also, the NPDES regulations, which is the National Elimination Stormwater Discharge System, has asked everybody upstream to keep their area clean so that the systems downstream are cleaner, including the harbor. So historically, it was wonderful. There was a lot of flushing of the salt water, fresh water, a lot of rainwater that came through. Then we channeled the river. That no longer happened. We started using a lot of chemicals in farms. So it started to really decline. And then just really recently, the last 10 to 15 years, there's people like Wendy, and maybe her mother or your mother, anybody that really cared, started saying, hey, wait, we miss those animals that were there. So that's how actually the Sanitation District has built a mitigation wetlands to clean the water coming out of the Wilmington Drain so that the harbor is cleaner. It's connected to the NPDES, keeping both the Santa Monica Bay and the harbor cleaner. Good
Thank
question.
you, Tracy. And we have another question from Lana Trung. She says, how many species do we think live there?
I know for sure there's 104 bird species that have been counted, so we need to update the website. But I would say on a regular order of magnitude, there are probably, so it's 100, there's probably 100 species of plants, that's 200. There's easily 500 species of insects. So upwards of about between 800 and 1,000 insect species that we could easily document and go, if we were to do an iNaturalist program, let's say, we could easily do a BioBlitz and find that many species, especially in the springtime. Good question.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we have another question from an anonymous attendee. They're wondering what our top 3 favorite facts about this place are.
I think the top, they're going to change from everybody. Okay, so everybody is different. But me, as a person who's partially indigenous, I am in love with the land. I love the smell, the history. I love to walk where my ancestors have walked. I love to. You look at this frog at the end of this video or this program. The ancestors of that frog have been there for thousands, maybe up to 100,000 years. And to me, that's the number one thing. It's connected to eternity. Number two is it's dynamic. You have all of these great. I love the people that come to the Bixby Marshlands because they love the land too, and to see that joy in the people's faces to go exploring, it's one of my things that just touches my heart. I feel like I'm going to cry just thinking about it. And then also that it's the biodiversity of the life. You have so many mammals, so many birds, so many insects, so many plants. The biodiversity makes me full and happy. It's not arid. It's dynamic. It's beautiful. It's life. Good question.
That's fantastic, Tracy. I don't see anyone with their hands up. I don't see any more questions. I see a lot of compliments in the chat box. So people really appreciated this. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, you see a question, Genesis? Go ahead.
Yeah, they keep pouring in. How does the ecosystem in the marshlands function?
It's a flow through wetlands. So the water, that's another part of who I am, is I love to look at the way the systems work, and this is a system that works. So the rainwater comes up out of the north, goes through the Wilmington drain, and it flows into the wetlands and infiltrates into the soil. So the system works in two ways. It works kind of laterally across the surface and also vertically from the sky. But the system also works according to the cycles of the seasons. You can actually see that all 4 seasons occur, because you have the winter where things are pretty dormant, quiet, but you have a lot of birds that are wintering there. Then you have the spring where everything comes to life and you end up with a lot of birth that happens there. Then in the summer you get that little bit of decline, and then you go back into the winter again. So the system itself, the ecological system itself, is like a globe, and all the little points connect to each other and help each other out, so that it's a dynamic system that works.
And we'll continue to take questions. There's a flood that just came in, so thank you for that.
Okay.
What is the best time of year and day to see birds?
That's a very good question, and that's one of my favorites. I love seeing birds. The 2 biggest months are May. There's a trigger there. It's the equinox and what's the other one? Equinox and help me somebody. The vernal equinox and the autumnal one. So it's May and September are the 2 times when the light is shifting just enough to cause the flush of birds, the migration to go through. I was at Madrona Marsh yesterday morning. I had 43 species. I had a Virginia's warbler, which is really super rare. There's only been 1 in the county yet this year. But in spring in this area, on a single day, I've had 70 species. So that's how dynamic it is. And I'd love to do a bird walk with you guys, and get to see that. It's incredible.
And we'll get there. Until then, we'll keep broadcasting. So if you do have ideas for broadcasts and stories that you'd like us to develop, let us know. I'm still going to continue asking questions for those of you who want to stay with us. We're really enjoying this. So I have a question from an anonymous attendee. Are there turtles out there?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Unfortunately, turtles have been extirpated from the land. That means locally extinct. They were in the watershed and they remain in the watershed. The only turtle was the Pacific pond turtle. And they are further up in the watershed where you live, Wendy, they are, where my sister lives, they are, and all the way up through the canyons where the rivers come together from the LA River. The last pond turtle was one that was brought to Madrona Marsh. I became really good friends with this turtle. It was literally walking by Bixby Marsh when it was picked up. So I don't know if there was work in the Wilmington Drain or something happened, but we ended up rescuing it. It's an endangered species, and so it's illegal to hold or to take an endangered species. So we had to hang on to it until we could find a captive breeding program where they could take that young male, it was a young boy, with so much personality. That guy would just follow me around. It was so fun to have him around for a while. And then his progeny are now populating the Azusa Canyon area.
So we have a question. I think some people need to sign off, which is totally fine, but we'll stay for those who still have questions. But John asked if we're going to have a recording of this presentation, and we absolutely will. And I know Maria Rosales has tuned in. She is our social media person extraordinaire at the Sanitation Districts, and I know she'll post it on YouTube. So yes, we will provide a recording of today's broadcast. And there are recordings out there of our previous broadcasts as well. And we're going to continue this program until we can all be out there in person. So thank you for that, John. And then we have a question from an anonymous attendee for Tracy. Do you see the same species of organisms out there each year?
No, yes and no. It's a dynamic system. So you have residents, the tree frogs are residents. You have the Cooper's hawks that are now residents. Obviously the plant people are residents, marsh flies, the things that are residential that live there. But that system probably draws from the entire South Bay region, all of the migrating insects, butterflies, dragonflies, and birds. It's very different. If those people who do bird go on to eBird and look at the Bixby Marshland's hotspot list, and you can see that, for example, we haven't seen a yellow-bellied sapsucker since 2017. It's just really neat to see that expansion of birds that have been seen there.
And that is a great segue into Caitlin Lau's question. She says, do we think that the absence of humans due to our recent quarantine period has affected the health of the marshlands?
The health itself is excellent. So not the health. However, it has dramatically changed the nearness to the trails that things are living. And also the startle response is less. So just the same thing as when you're going through a sidewalk, you're walking down the sidewalk and a car goes by fast, you're like, oh, you have that startle response. Well, when people are going by, there's a startle response from the animals. So they don't want to be startled because they're about energy conservation. So they want to move away from people and be just a little ways away where they feel safe. So when I was there to see a coyote, 30 feet from you playing, not just like wandering, people see them wandering, but playing, that's a really big deal. That blue grosbeak literally started about 50 yards from me and ended up about 15 yards from me. And I had to stand perfectly still. If I move, if there was a reflection that came off of me, the bird would have left. But yes, the proximity to the wetlands has changed where they are, the people proximity.
That's fantastic. So I don't see, but I will open it up to Genesis as well. I don't see any more open questions. I see just a tremendous number of compliments for you, Tracy, in the chat box.
I appreciate it.
And an interest in more educational programs, which we are going to provide. So we're very excited about that. With that, I will just go ahead, Genesis.
Yeah, there are no more questions. For anyone who's interested in our next Bixby tour, we do offer public tours the first Saturday of every month. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll have the recording on YouTube, as Wendy mentioned. So you can follow us along and stay tuned for the next one. And Tracy, you were amazing. So thank you.
It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Wendy, for asking. So,
yeah, thank you, Tracy. I want to applaud now for helping us to make history. I think we had more than 200 attendees, and I think that's amazing for a Saturday morning on a holiday weekend. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for your interest in our marshland. And with that, I think we'll sign off. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a safe weekend.